Hey, hey, how are ya?
I am good, John. How you doing, Julie?
I'm great, thanks.
Yay!
Guys,
we got a rock
ready
star.
to find your fire?
I'm ready.
I am so ready.
I will tell you, hey, if you're a listener to us, we have got our get list that we are like super excited to get on the podcast. And we have one of those.
One is in the
today.
house. One is in the house. Her
She was
lipstick
literally
is
on one of
so
our
on
dream
point.
lists.
Get on YouTube and see it. But Terry's in the house, and we are
seriously
so excited.
because all of us that work in the nonprofit field, you give of yourself a lot, and you have to pour yourself out a lot. And so staying inspired is something that is just absolutely core to us. And we have Terri Broussard Williams with us, and she will amp you up in the best way possible. But she is the author of Find Your Fire, which is her new book that just dropped out. And so I'm holding it up. If you're looking on YouTube, check out her book. But she has got just an incredible story. She comes from a family that service and community was just at the core. And I hope that she's going to share some of that story with us today because it just pulls you right in and you see the kind of difference maker that she is today. But she's a sought after speaker. She's a lobbyist for some of the most important causes for her community. And so she has just got an incredible story to tell. And she is here. We gave her one thing that she could do for us: amp us up. So I want to kick it to Terri and just say hi. Thank you so much for being here. And if you would just share a little bit of your story with us, Terri.
Yes. Thank you for having me and allowing me to spend this time with you all. I have to tease you. At the beginning, you start by asking each other, how you doing? There's only one answer, and that's like, we are good.
Hashtag TM
so
2020.
We're on brand always.
You can always say that you are good.
Yes.
But for your listeners and viewers that might not be familiar with me, I'm Terri Broussard Williams. I currently live in Austin, Texas, where I've been since 2008. And I want everyone to know that you can be a leader that will turn a moment into a movement. You don't need a pedigree. You don't need a fancy degree. You just need good work ethic, good heart, and good intentions. And that is something that truly is in my core.
I love that so much because, when we launched this podcast, the main intent was to resource and lift up our nonprofit colleagues who were sort of on the front lines of fundraising and development, marketing, those types of things. But what we've discovered is we've had so many people that have come into this community just searching for ways that they could be a blessing in their community, that they could find inspiration or find where is their place in the world, whether that's professional or what can I do to be a light in my community. And I love that you're here in this space right now because it's an applicable topic. I think that anyone can kind of glob onto, really. Yeah. And I'm really curious about your upbringing, and I wonder if you could just start there and talk about this thread that has been woven inside your family, it sounds like, for generations in terms of service. And tell us where you grew up and how you came to learn about giving to others.
Yes. I tell everyone just service is in my DNA. I remember being 5 years old, maybe 6, but 5 or 6. And my mother and her sorority sisters would hold a reading academy, the Ivy Reading Academy, every Saturday. And they would educate kids on how to read, but also try to get them up a grade level. And so I would hand out the milk, punch, and cookies. And it's so funny because when I was a lobbyist for the American Heart Association, that would be the worst thing ever. We need reduced, sugar punch and low-fat milk, and cookies had to, have a certain amount of sugar. But I was the cookie pusher. And I watched my mother and her sorority sisters succeed. But that story is not an exception in my upbringing. My grandparents on both sides of the family gave back to church. And my mother's family was very instrumental in creating a church in Truman, Louisiana, which is a neighborhood in Lafayette. And they did it because they were watching families walk to church and, in the rain during hurricanes. People actually go to church like right before a hurricane in Louisiana.
No better time to pray.
Yeah, right. You got to keep it together. And they wanted really for there to be a building that was a pillar in their community. And so they became church builders. And what's so crazy is I got engaged 10 years ago. 1 month after I got engaged, I'm an LSU Tiger and I was marrying a UT Longhorn basketball player. Y'all, that church
House
burned down.
divided. House divided.
Well, the church burned down. The gateway to heaven burned.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, a rivalry so strong, it set a building on fire. But my parents then stepped up, and my mother and father then became the church builders, and they led the capital campaign. And what's so beautiful about it, it reminds me that your legacy lives even far beyond after you're gone. We buried my father about 3 months after that church opened. So his legacy, is in the limestone in the building. It's within the walls, and his spirit will be there forever. And so, a lot of times I get hesitant to even tell that story because it centers around church, but and not everyone believes, in church, and not everyone might be a Catholic, but I think the principles are the same no matter what you believe, and the universe works the same. If you see it, feel it, and build it, your legacy will be forever. And so that's why I tell people you can be a leader that will turn a moment into a movement.
I love that catchphrase. And I think it's, throughout your book, and you've got, practical advice and stories of how women have done that and been the banner of that. I wonder if you would, talk about some moments that happened in your life that you have played that out, how you channeled that into energy to create movement for positive change.
Oh, wow. There's so many, movements can happen really big or small. And so sometimes I like to focus on the small movements because you want people to feel like anyone can do them, right? But I'll start with the big one and then I'll tell you a small one. But so in 2000, what?
Love it.
He's being affirming.
I'm
yes,
affirming.
keep
I'm
going.
sorry, I'm an affirmer.
Thank you. You made me pull out my pen. Thank you.
Oh, look at that. You got to get on YouTube, guys. I keep telling this. It's more fun on YouTube to watch.
So when I was a lobbyist for the American Heart Association in 2008, I was a part of an all-female lobby team under the age of 30. And so, we're walking up that Capitol, probably had some fuzzy ink pens like this one, but just full of great intentions, full of solid, good work ethics, and of course, good hearts. And we wanted to make the state smoke-free, all workplaces, including bars and restaurants. And it was the year of Hurricane Katrina, and people told us we couldn't get it done. And our point was, well, if we're going to rebuild this first-class city that we call New Orleans and is an international destination, why not make it smoke-free so that everyone could work and have healthy lungs and not have to choose between their health and a paycheck? Well, it got crazy. I mean, we had a bill sponsor that started smoking a cigar on the Senate floor. You can Google that in the newspapers. Our coalition collapsed.
Not cool, buddy.
We stopped talking. We no longer became friends. Work was not fun. But I never gave up. I leaned on my mother and her friends to make phone calls to their lawmakers. I leaned on volunteers that would come walk the halls with me every day. And that pivotal moment when we could have given up, when we probably should have given up, and our opponents wanted us to give up, we didn't. And that's where we turned that moment into a movement. And we passed the legislation.
Oh,
and by the
congrats.
time we did, the entire coalition was back. And we celebrated. We had a kumbaya moment over some margaritas. And,
Yep.
Not
and
over
that loss
cigars.
still on the
Just kidding.
That's a much healthier option right there.
It's crazy that was only at least 10 or 15 years ago. It wasn't that long
That's
ago,
right.
just to think how much culturally has changed since then. What a cool story though.
15 years ago.
15
I
years
only
ago.
know because we got married the weekend of Katrina. So
wow.
that's stuck in my mind. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that if you are passionate about what you want to do, it's you will find the hustle within you to get
always.
done what you need to get done. Because if you don't have your volunteers showing up, it's Mom, Mom, you need to go find 20 of your friends and get on the phone because we need to get this done. And I think that's what I like so much about what you're saying, because you just kind of have to tap into that fire reserve that is within you. If you want to get your mission, your message, whatever it is across, it's like, it's going to have to take a little bit of grit to dig into that. So please talk a little bit more about that and how you were able to kind of harness that and channel into this book and find all of these wonderful women who are sharing these excellent stories.
Well, yeah, to break it down, you said something that really resonates with me. And, I think I have a friend who was the founder of the Women's March, Janae Ingram. She's incredible. That is an incredible movement. I also have a friend in our neighborhood. She started Happy Birthdays. Just when you're putting together birthday packages for your son or daughter, put one together for a child that's in a foster home. A small movement, right? But it means a lot
I love that mission.
To a child. But the biggest movement we can ever cultivate is within ourselves. We have to be healthy, happy, whole, and not all those things all the time or at once, but we kind of have to be centered in order to move the needle forward and keep those movements moving, or they're going to fall flat. They're going to fall flat because we're not healthy and we can't sustain the energy to keep them going. They're going to fall flat because we might be angry inside. And when we're angry inside, no one's going to follow us. They're not going to feel inspired by us, or our words might not feel authentic, So I tell everyone, sometimes all you have to do is just smile. Like, if you are the person that is going to smile to everyone on the street, like, your movement is legit, because you might help someone get to the end of the day. So I love that. You also asked about the women in Find Your Fire. They're all incredible. And I have to tell you, most of them I know just from my work and the way that I move in the world. And, I have some friends that are super famous. They're super incredible. They've done incredible things. But if I really wanted to tell the story that you don't need a pedigree to start a movement, I wanted to turn to some everyday heroes, some people that we see at our city halls or at committee meetings, to show that anyone truly can do the work. And that's what's representative of every single person in Find Your Fire.
And you call them fire starters, right?
I do.
I love I feel like you got to follow Terri on Instagram, because she will pump you up with just her stories and such. But I mean, you've created a movement of just that. I love that it's like everybody has this fire within it. Like, what is it that lights you up that you need to impart on the world? So could you help us, turn that into some practical steps of somebody that, feels or sees a need that they want to do? How do you turn that into something bigger?
Sure. I call fire starters they're people that see things that others ignore, and they take the first step. They take action. How many times do you see something, you just blow it off, or you don't think about it again? But if you take that first action, you are a fire starter, and we can all be one, But I talk about in Find Your Fire, the fire starter formula, 4 things, just 4 that you must do to create a movement. And they're not fancy. They're not fancy terms. They're not intricate, because if we are creating systems that feel heavy, how are we going to encourage people to take that first step? Right?
Bravo.
And to be brave, bold, and courageous. So I say, find your cause, truly know what your cause is. What is it that inspires you, fuels your passion from within? Then find a collective, the people who you want to sit at a board table with you, the people that you want to be cultural ambassadors for you, the people that you want to really keep that movement moving. You have to be of, like minds and like hearts. If those 2 things are not in alignment, not going to work. And then you really want to begin communicating. Once you're all on the same page with that collective, then you can begin communicating, telling the public what is it that you see, how you're going to change it, and your why. And your why really is your North Star. So that's why we start with cause. And then lastly, you get into the work of doing the change. It's the last step. And change always takes a different form. And you really have to understand what type of movement you want to create to know which way it's going to go. So that's why there are worksheets in the back of the book.
There you go. we all kind of need the Cliff Notes version in life for things like that. Because I will say, you know, taking that first leap when it's not innate to you. I mean, there are those of us who are fearless, and we are born fearless. And I say this because John will always like look at me very scared because I'm always going to ask that question that he does not want me to ask. I want to go there, and I'm just kind of like, what's the worst that could happen?
I'm the peacemaker, Terri.
Yeah,
So
I guess I'm
like,
the pot stirrer. I don't know. I don't know what that means. But I think this topic is so timely right now because this week is like the 6-month mark, at least for this part of the country, of sitting in COVID. And we are 6 months in, and we are all hungover on COVID. We are all done with the quarantine, and there's no foreseeable end in sight for the time being. And, you know, I wonder what advice you would give to not just professionals, but we have a lot of people that are board members that listen in, volunteers, or people who are just looking for a way to give back right now. How can someone employ these 4 steps, which, by the way, are incredibly simple and incredibly relevant? Bravo. How can they begin to sort of look around and start with finding that cause? And what would be your best advice to them, especially the people feeling fatigue?
Yeah, I think those are 2 separate things, you know. For people that are already in the game, now's a great time to look at your cause and see if it stands true today, because this might be a really good time to reimagine, reinvent, and respond differently. The nonprofit that you once built might not be the nonprofit that needs to exist today. You know, they always say, what got you here won't get you there. But if you are part of a group that is just getting started, again, you have to just really ensure that what your cause is relevant. It's going to serve others. It's not going to duplicate services, and really come together to refine that. And so for people that might feel fatigue and they have not got started, this might not be the time for you. You just because you desire something does not mean you have to take action today. You might need to rest up and get healthy, happy, and whole before you can begin that movement or that journey. If you are already, you know, a board member or a social impact strategist or a nonprofit executive, and you have a COVID hangover, that is okay. It is okay to not be okay.
Sit in it. The thing that
you have,
we're not all, we are not okay. Okay.
It is okay to not be okay. But what is required for this moment? 2 things. One, you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I say that all the time. And I read that somewhere. I didn't come up with it, and I wish I could remember where I got it from. But you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. That's the first thing you have to remember. The second thing you have to ask yourself is, am I truly serving the need? Am I truly serving the need? And a lot of nonprofits are coming to this point where there was mission drift. You know, they were taking on too much. They were scaling on in a manner that was not creating revenue. And so, like, now's the time to scale back. It is okay to reduce services. It is okay to say, like, we were not headed in the right direction. Or maybe you could say what we were doing really created a larger equity gap, right? Sometimes we do things that we don't even realize that are creating, you know, systemic issues and adding to them. So, you know, if you have a COVID hangover, it might just really be time to assess where you are and where you want to go.
John, you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. That is
that's like a permission
fabulous
to not,
quote.
I love that.
to not martyr yourself.
I mean,
right?
especially as me. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about Catholic. I mean, I came from a Catholic. My mother went to Catholic school forever, and it's like I'm just kind of predisposed and hardwired to feel guilty about wanting to like do a lot. Yeah. Yes, and to get in there, whether I have the bandwidth to do it or not. And it's like, no. You don't have to do it all. You know, let's admit and sit in this discomfort of the world that we're living in now, and let's lean on each other a little bit more than we're used to leaning on each other. Let's ask for some help, because we cannot find our fire unless we're taking care of ourselves. I think that's such a good, fabulous tip.
I agree. I mean, and from being in a role, you know, when it's more service-based, when you are the one that's literally pouring out, you've got to take care of yourself, and you got to be in a place to be able to do that. For sure. So,
And I'll tell you the story. I want to share the story really quick.
We love stories.
I have a friend who is this fabulous DE&I consultant. And if you are doing DE&I work, you might be a little fatigued right now, right?
Oh my gosh.
And so I saw her have this interaction with someone where she was talking to an organization about how they were creating systemic issues when their intention was to break them down. That is a legit conversation that she should have had. But somehow, and it was in her own community, but somehow the weight and all the, survivor guilt, survivor trauma, survivor, just hangover, if you will, came to that conversation. So instead of her evangelizing and teaching someone, I watched this talented consultant attack someone.
Oh.
And, that was not her intent, but it was because she did not rest. It was because she was just on go, 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 that she didn't even process it. I had to call her later and say, friend, I need to talk to you about what I saw. And so that is the same for all of us right now. If you are in a space where you're providing food to families, you might be burned out. Or if you are helping with recovery issues from Hurricane Laura or Sally, you might be burned out. So we just need to remember that we got to take care of ourselves, because you can't march on the front lines if you're not ready to be on the front lines.
That's good
That
advice.
is good advice and good permission.
And somehow we just need permission in these days to be able to feel that and to be okay with it. And we have a podcast that's coming up in a couple of weeks where we're actually going to sit down with a psychologist, and we're going to talk about just the mental health of all of us, not just people that are in nonprofits, because there's definitely some professional fatigue, but also just individually. How are we doing? How are we doing at home? How are we doing with ourselves? These are important questions. I'm a huge fan of therapy. Yeah. And counseling and all of that, and just processing through your feelings. So I think these are really healthy lessons. Julie, Julie was going to jump in here and ask, I thought, a really good question.
I'm texting them that I have a question for you. I was like,
love it.
I'm going to butt in. Okay, so you just seem so wise and accomplished, and I just wonder if there's something, looking back, I know this is a curveball question, but looking back, is there something that you know now that you wish you could go back and tell early, young professional Terri that you could advise on us today?
There's a lot.
Pick your favorite.
I'm a recovering perfectionist, so that's why you see this. If you stumble, make it part of the dance. Don't obsess over the failure.
Hilarious. I haven't seen that.
That's behind her on a wall. Yes.
Yes. I worked at an organization that when you accomplished a goal, it was like, so what? What are you doing now? Or when you hit that next goal, it was like, that was really great. Like, yeah, but there's still like more money to be raised or more bills to pass. Okay, thank you. Or if, if you had a metric that you had to pass 27 laws in a year, when you passed 27, it was like, okay, the rest of your peers have not. So where's the 28? But it's just that common hamster wheel just always had to keep going. And I got to this place where I was on the hamster wheel and was just struggling to keep up, struggling to scale a team from about 10 to 32 staff lobbyists, struggling to understand what do you do when you go from $1 million to $4 million, struggling just to figure out how to go from a local structure to a state structure. And the leadership skills were in me. They were things that were inherent, but no one was sitting there and giving me the professional help that I needed. And we do that a lot to nonprofit professionals. If they excel at one thing, we assume they're going to excel at all, right? And we don't even check in, And so you will see quite oftentimes those that are A players and are most successful will burn out or get fired, which we don't talk about very often because they didn't hit a metric, because we expected them to do what they did in year 1, in year 2 and 3, but we doubled those, fiscal goals 2 or 4 times over. So I was on this hamster wheel and just my world came tumbling down. My dad died And for the first time ever in my life, like ever, I started working in a television newsroom at 16, went to college 3 days after high school graduation, worked full time as a news producer my last year of college, and graduated in 3 years. One time I had like 3 internships, a newspaper, a radio station, and a TV station. I'd never stopped. So for the first time ever, the phone stops ringing. I don't have work assignments, and everyone just expected me to like relax. And I'm like, what's going on? And then it was just like, boom, there's like this awakening. I shifted from this unconscious living to this conscious living and understanding the impact of me being on the hamster wheel. My personality had left. Like I feel like I was just walking around with like this veil, like, what's that show, Stepford Wives? Just this glazed look. And
yes.
wasn't healthy and happy. I had gained about 20 pounds, so I was not my best. And so when I look at it now, sure, people were following, but they were following based off of a title and these awards I had and these expectations that if they didn't, that people were going to think they were crazy. And once I just let go of all that and chose to live consciously, like the abundance of life just tripled. I got my personality back. Like the universe just came in alignment, and this path that I didn't even envision or see for myself just began. And so I tell everyone the 4 things I learned during that time. You gotta have faith. And faith is just knowing that, there is a way. And if you see something that means you're called to do it, just trust in that. The second is fortitude. Fortitude is like, you can crush any obstacle. There's always, always a way. You just have to think about the way or who can help you find the way. And then you got to fail forward. And it's okay to fail. I choose when I fail forward to fail forward fast. It helps me become more innovative, helps me become generative. And whatever it was that I was working on, just like becomes like awesome. And then last, sometimes you just gotta have the faith and the grace and just allow all the things to come together. And so I always trust in that. And, it just somehow, it always works out, especially when I forgive myself. And so that finding that grace, when you fail, when you have the faith and the fortitude, finding that grace and forgiving yourself is the biggest gift that you can find.
Wow.
That's an awesome.
Somebody listening.
I almost forgot the last one. I had to stretch that out to remember.
No, it was so good. I feel like someone listening just did the deepest exhale ever in their car.
Yeah.
I think I love that you're reminding everyone that you have to pour into yourself before you can pour out to others. And I just think that is such great advice. So thank you for all of that.
It all seems to work out
Mm-hmm.
when I forgive myself.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
I think
powerful.
embracing failure is one of the hardest things that we can do as human beings. And I've heard an expression once, and I say it to my daughters all the time, that you don't lose, you learn. Every time that you fail, it's like we're going to take something from that experience and we're going to make it better. And so, yes, you can cry. Yes, you can be angry, but we need to figure out, how we can take that and be a better person and be a better listener and be a better worker or whatever it is, and apply that where it needs to be applied. I think that's such good advice. And I love all your stories because I can just, when you're even looking at the screen right now as we are with Terri, I mean, she's so vibrant and she's so warm. You feel like a hug, even though you're on a digital screen. I wonder if there's a story in your life or in your career where you've really felt like you have seen philanthropy or humanity come into a space and just transform you in a way. Is there a particular story that sticks out to you?
Me as a person?
Yeah. Or yeah, for sure.
I have to go back to my time in Louisiana. I just remember the feeling of the day after Hurricane Katrina. I mean, it just was crazy. I was living in Lafayette, which is 2 hours west of New Orleans, but my father worked in the oil industry. And so growing up, we spent a lot of time in New Orleans. There was an apartment that he had, and, on the weekends we would go there. And so I feel connected to that city. And so back then we had blackberries, y'all. There were blackberries.
Oh my gosh,
the little rolly ball.
Blackberry.
Can y'all remember that?
Remember when we thought they were
click,
so
click,
progressive?
click.
Like they just
Yes,
look like a
it'd be so
futuristic
big.
something.
Oh my
yes,
gosh.
yes.
Because we're
My
like,
hands
how
were
are we going to use the
small.
iPhone without all the buttons? I remember
Totally.
thinking like, this is going to be a challenge.
It was like
Where's my
Ziggy from
buttons?
Quantum Leap, like in your hands. So I get it.
All the Generation Z's just turned us off, by the way.
Yeah,
But
okay.
that's
Yep,
okay.
we just lost every
Just
young
kidding.
professionals with my comment. I just aged myself.
The BlackBerry, it was legit. It never failed. It never turned off on you. But we're like pinning each other because the phones didn't work. So you could use a phone on the BlackBerry, but then the pin feature would work even when you didn't have like internet or cellular or whatever. So we were pinning each other, and our friends were everywhere. And some of our friends who had the biggest homes had nothing. And it wasn't just that they didn't have like a physical home, but they didn't have cash. Just the way that we viewed money then, it's very different than I think the way that we view money now. We've had recessions, and now with COVID, like we will forever hold cash as king, right? It'll be kind of like my grandparents after the Depression. But then my big baller friends that were attorneys, they were just spending. And they didn't have anything. And so I just remember everyone coming together, like to help them get new beds, to bring, furniture that was in storage to their homes, or making sure that people were fed. And my mother's this incredible human. She had friends they were sort of friends. They were people that we knew that knew others, but she was cooking for them and bringing the food to their homes that they were renting in Lafayette, which was their temporary residence. Teachers that were in New Orleans, she was a principal. She was like making sure they had jobs, and you saw everyone come together. And so for me, what I really took away is, well, two things about Louisiana. One, it's resilient. There was nothing that really stood tall after Katrina, right? But the people. And the second lesson was that Louisiana is resilient, but also the joie de vivre, the joy of living, which is what we say, that joie de vivre is going nowhere. Come hell or high water or no house. And so, I always take that with me. And I think that might be where I began to see like faith and fortitude, which I talk a lot about in Find Your Fire, just come into play.
That's a great story.
That was
Goodness.
an awesome story. I cannot imagine living through something like that. And you're right. I mean, when you talk about resiliency, I mean, I do think of like the people of New Orleans. I think of the people of New York City. I mean, I even think of like Oklahoma Cityans and people that have had just really tragic major events happen in that area, and they rise up out of, the ashes or whatever that is. That's a great story. Thank you.
So Terri, this is going to be difficult because you've already given us so much value, but we ask every guest, what's one good thing? And we define that as something that you could take today and put into action, real practical hack for life or success. What's something you would impart on us to do?
Gosh, that is a hard one. I should have really thought about that.
Go with your gut. That's what you talk about, right?
Yes.
Go with your gut. What's your gut saying?
Yeah, and that's really what I was going to say. The good thing is you got to just be yourself, right? When I think about collaborations in the nonprofit sector, at least for me, when they've gone flat, wasn't myself. I was trying to orchestrate the deal, trying to set the table for those who should have been setting the table for themselves, or trying to control it to make sure that some metrics were hit, or when I think of just relationships that went south, I wasn't myself, or when I think of times when I might have not given the best talk, I was just truly not myself. So I think when we start from a place of transparency and authenticity, when we let people know we're having a bad day or we're struggling, they will find empathy and they will lift you up instead of being judgmental. Because, when we are looking to control and orchestrate, we're worried about upsetting someone. We're worried about failure or someone judging us. So just let it all go. And I'll add like a 0.5 for anyone that wears lipstick. What I say, my one good thing, always, this is not a red, even though it looks like a red. It's like a berry. But
Beautiful
a little
wine
bit
color.
of Spanx and red lipstick can get you through anything.
Amen.
And if there's a
That's my
man
good
out
thing.
there that wants to try that out, we don't judge. This is a no judgment free zone. And so I have both of those things, and they are what my girlfriend and I call our maids of honor, because without them, they have been with us since the beginning, and they are making us a whole and vibrant human. So
Find your fire
excellent
and
advice.
your lipstick.
And your
Lip
Spanx.
color.
Yes.
I love it.
I call it my body armor. Like if I got on a new pair of Spanx and a new lip gloss, it's game
changer.
day.
That's
Is this enough that we can
get?
get Sarah Blakely on? Is this enough of an ad? Come on, Sarah. We want you on the podcast.
Terri, you are so much fun. You are our kind of people.
So wise.
She just dropped
are
like
my
all of
people.
our key ethos words:
know.
transparency, authenticity, empathy, service. I mean, those are all the things that all of us have within us. We just
They
need to
are.
tap into it, and we need to figure out how we can have this abundance lifestyle where there is enough for everyone. But it is going to require us to step up, put our hands out, and not in a way that says give me, but it's like, here's my hand, take it, and let's do this together, and let's come together in communities, because community is where miracles occur. It's where massive movements are affected. And so I just thank you so much for all the wonderful counsel you gave us. If someone wants to connect with you, if they want to find out more about your book, can you point us to your websites, or where are you on social platforms?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram at Terri B. Williams, Twitter, Terri B. Williams. Usually everything is Terri B. Williams.
Terri.
Yeah.
Yes, Terri B. Williams with an S. And that's also my website. And you can enter in a little contact form if you have a question on the website. And I do answer. Sometimes it might take a day or two, but I answer the emails that I get. So grateful for all of you for holding space, for allowing people to transform themselves while transforming others. Y'all are incredible.
Oh,
Little fire
thank you.
starters.
Man. Every time she says that, I keep
Hashtag.
thinking of the Stephen King book that I read
gosh.
years ago called
I
Fire
need to read it. I
Starters.
don't know about this.
Not the same. No, it
different
is
fire
the
starters. Oh,
antithesis
goodness.
of what you're
Okay.
saying. People who've read it at home are dying laughing and saying, Becky, I can't believe you're closing this podcast out talking about Stephen King. Terri B. Williams, thank you so much for
You're
your
awesome.
wonderful advice. Please go to her Instagram. It is sensational, and the book is outstanding, and it's got awesome reviews. We noticed online too. So thanks for your time
thank
today,
you.
Terri.
We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.